don't have a seat would take one, I would appreciate it. I'd like to welcome you to our April 3rd, 2012 board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to follow that by wishing my 95-year-old mother a happy birthday today. I'm sure all of you have a gift for her. If you want anything from us today, it better be a nice one. I'm kidding. We're kidding. Really, I am. I really am. Oh boy. That wouldn't be good at all. I'd like to get out of this pickle I'm in by introducing my colleagues. To my left, Vice Chair Francis Spivey Weber, and to my right, Board Member Tam Doduk. Mr. Howard, would you take the microphone away from me, please?
Thank you, Chair
and introduce your staff.
To my right, Chief Deputies John Bishop and Karen Turgovich. To my left, Michael Laufer, Chief Counsel, and we're assisted today by Janine Townsend.
Thank you, Tom. As all of you know, we, for legal constraints, need to go through an emergency evacuation procedure. There are exit signs at the back of the room. If you do hear an alarm go off, please proceed down the stairs in an orderly fashion. And from that point, you're really kind of on your own, because we are rehabilitating the park across the street to make it more comfortable for those who spend a goodly portion of their time over there observing all of us working. I would like you to know that this meeting is being webcast and recorded, so if you come to the microphone, please identify yourself and whom it is you are representing. And importantly to me, if you would all turn off those things that make noise, I would appreciate it. We have the presentation of a Superior Accomplishment Award. Victoria Whitney, Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality, will be presenting the Superior Accomplishment Award. Would you come forward, Victoria?
I'm actually here on behalf of Roger Briggs, because Region 3 nominated 2 of the DWQ staff for this award for their work on a project that involved Region 3. You all know, I'm sure, about our GeoTracker groundwater database, and Region 3 instituted a pilot project to look at getting some irrigated ag land data into our database. That was necessarily a fairly broad team effort, and so Region 3 nominated the 2 staff in DWQ who served as a liaison between our IT people and the Region 3 staff as part of a team award, and the rest of the award recipients, I think, are in Region 3. So I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity while I'm here to give you a really quick demo of what this program does. So Kevin's going to take over the reins for that. As you know, we are trying to leverage our existing computer systems. We have a number of computer systems, and we've been making some enhancements to GeoTracker. It now tracks water levels. I know a lot of people say that there is no capability in the state to track water levels, but we have that capability in GeoTracker, and we're also working on getting other information into the database as well. A lot of it is existing information, which we've had in our files, but as Tom likes to say, if it's not readily accessible, it's like having it on the dark side of the moon. So we're trying to make it more useful and meet our commitments under the strategic plan to be more transparent and to leverage work that's done by others. So this all ties into all of those broader efforts. Oh, go ahead.
Very quickly, we'll just look at the GeoTracker screen. This is the standard screen that all of the cleanup programs and other groundwater users see. I'm going to do a project search, and you'll notice we have all these boxes here. I'm going to unclick the cleanup boxes, which are the standard ones, and look at irrigated lands. Search for the irrigated land sites, and you'll notice there's 3,686 records. See, that's how many farms in Region 3 have uploaded information here. So we'll just click on one, the first one, and you can see that there's various information, who the supervisor and caseworker is. It's in Region 3 and the address. And if we view the electronic notice of intent, we pick up the information about this farm. So this is where it is, out in Santa Barbara County. You can see the parcel number, the name of the landowner, their address, the farm contact, acreage, the type of discharge that they have, type of irrigation that they have, crop types. It's an orchard. And so this is how we've begun to gather information about irrigated agriculture in Region 3 and look forward to expanding this to the other regions as they become able to do that. The electronics is all available, waiting for the programs to get on board.
So thanks, Kevin. So the specific project was to set up data entry screens for the farmers so that they could enter the information on their farms that goes into our database and is readily available to everybody. So the two award recipients from DWQ, I'm going to call them up here now, are Hamid Folad, so come on up, Hamid, and Brian Lovers. And their role in this, as I said, was they were the liaisons between DWQ and our IT staff and our IT consultants and then the folks at Region 3 to make sure that the data entry screens met Region 3's need and that setting them up and putting this data in the system doesn't crash our other systems. And you know, I'm really excited about this project because it was a pilot project. It was successful. We're going to expand it to Region 5. That's the next step. And it is a perfect example of the board working collaboratively with a number of folks and working collaboratively, staff working collaboratively within the board system to accomplish something that helps make things better for everybody. So I want to congratulate Hamid and Brian. And I want to thank Roger and his staff for recognizing the effort of our staff. And I also want to thank the IT people who, you know, are instrumental in any of these IT projects. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Who's taking the picture? Got it.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, gentlemen. With that done, at every board meeting, we have an opportunity for a public forum where a member of the public is more than welcome to come up and express their opinion on a matter that is not immediately pending before the board. Do you have any cards, Ms. Townsend? Do we have anybody that wishes to speak on the public forum? Seeing none. At this time, I would like to ask my colleagues if they have any report to make. Any of you have any confessions? Anything that you've done wrong? Good. Seeing none but smiles, I wonder. Mr. Howard, would you please introduce item number 3?
Item number 3 comes from the Division of Financial Assistance. State Water Board is being asked to close 4 underground storage tank cases based on the recommendation of the Underground Storage Tank Cleanup Fund Manager. We have Lisa Babcock will be presenting. I think this is probably Lisa's first time in her new role as the Underground Storage Tank Program Manager.
Does that mean we have to be nice to her from?
Yes, that would be nice.
Meeting?
I can handle it. Good morning, Chairman Hoppen and members of the board. I'm Lisa Babcock, Underground Storage Tank Cleanup Fund Manager. With me here at the table are Bob Traumer. On my right is Bob Traumer, Senior Engineering Geologist and Chief of the Fund's 5-year Review Unit, and Nathan Jacobson, Staff Counsel in the Office of Chief Counsel. Item 3 seeks your consideration of an order that would direct the closure of 4 underground storage tank cleanup cases, 3 overseen by the Orange County Healthcare Agency and 1 overseen by the County of Santa Barbara Fire Department. This action is authorized by the Health and Safety Code, also known as the 5-Year Review Authority. The law authorizes the board to review cases in the cleanup fund that have been active for more than 5 years and to close those cases as appropriate. These 4 cases have been reviewed under the 5-year review program at least twice, and for each review, each has been recommended for closure. These 4 cases have been open for 22 to 26 years, and nearly $3 million have been expended on cleanup of the 4 sites. State Board staff prepared a draft case closure summary and notice of opportunity for public comment for each of the cases and circulated these documents for public review. The 5-year review recommendations for closure, as well as the case closure summaries, have been reviewed by the local oversight agencies. In addition, the fee title owners of each tank site and the surrounding property owners received copies of the respective notice and closure summary. No comments have been received from anyone on any of these cases regarding this consideration. The final case closure summaries have been signed by a properly licensed professional. The order before you, if approved, includes a statement that the board adopts these final summaries as its official findings on these cases and directs staff to post the summaries and closure letters to GeoTracker. The counties have the regulatory responsibility to supervise the abandonment of monitoring wells. That concludes the staff presentation. We'll be happy to discuss any of the specific cases or to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lisa. Janine, do you have any cards in this?
I move adoption of this order.
I second it.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job, Lisa. Thank you very much. Mr. Howard, item number 4, please.
Item number 4 requests an additional $50,000 to be added to an existing, I believe it was $700,000 grant to the U.S. Bureau of Land Management entitled Wetland Management and Agricultural Organic Matter Reduction to Decrease Methylmercury Loads from the Cosumnes River Preserve. Steve Fagundis is presenting. He's our non-point source program manager.
Good morning. My name is Steve Fagundis, and I'm the chief of the Non-Point Source Program Implementation Unit in the Division of Water Quality. I'm here to present item number 4, which pertains to a request to add $50,000 to an existing Clean Water Act 319 implementation grant with the Bureau of Land Management. For this particular project, matching funding was also provided through in-kind services by the U.S. Geological Survey and the California Department of Fish and Game. The project was developed by BLM and approved by the State Board in 2009 in anticipation of the requirements that were going to come down with respect to the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board's Delta Methyl Mercury TMDL. This TMDL requires a 60% reduction in loads from the Cosumnes River watershed where this preserve is located. The TMDL also requires that entities that discharge methylmercury to the delta develop and validate management practices to control the discharge. The project basically implements modifications to land use practices across several dominant wetland types in the Central Valley: rice fields, seasonal wetlands, and permanent wetlands. Based on studies that were already conducted in the nearby Yolo wildlife area, it was estimated that there will be a 50 to 80% reduction in labile organic material in the treatment fields. It is expected that there will be a potential reduction of methylmercury loads from the treatment fields by which are approximately 600 acres, that will result in an overall reduction of 3 to 5% of the required reductions for the TMDL for the Cosumnes River watershed. The need for this additional funding is twofold. The first reason is that BLM has already incurred excess expenses that were not possible to anticipate when the grant was originally funded, and the second is the need to purchase several devices to obtain better estimates of important water quality parameters. The excess pumping costs were incurred due to the need to maintain a flow-through system in the wetland ponds and a minimum 8-inch water depth in the rice fields for the mosquito fish that were deployed for the methyl mercury bioaccumulation portion of the project. It was not possible to anticipate these excess costs due to forces outside of the control of BLM. Estimating the precise cost of maintaining a fixed water level over the hundreds of acres in the project area was extremely difficult. Pumping requirements for the test wetlands and rice fields fluctuate with unpredictable weather conditions and the tidal cycle, and as well as the demand for water in adjacent non-test wetlands, which can necessitate the use of less efficient pumps. The funding for the dissolved oxygen meter was needed because the conversion of mercury to methylmercury is highly dependent on dissolved oxygen concentration. Some measurements of DO are being made during the project. However, the frequency of measurements would be increased with the purchase of the on-site meter and would improve the understanding of the mercury to methylmercury conversion. In order to also calculate the load reduction estimates from the management practices tested in the project, a more accurate measurement of water flow is also needed, thus the cost for the water meter. BLM had previously planned to estimate load reductions using the fish bioaccumulation data and water testing results. However, having the meter will help them provide more accurate load reductions estimates. So in summary, the total additional costs requested are the already accomplished wetland pumping costs, which are approximately $10,000, the rice grower pumping costs, which were an additional $8,000, the wetland rehabilitation, which is $24,000, and this was required because to rehabilitate wetlands where one of the experimental treatments resulted in excessive weed growth, which reduced the habitat value, so it was subsequently necessary to put that habitat back to the way it was before the study. Number 4 was the dissolved oxygen meter, which was, as I explained before, to obtain more consistent and accurate information on the DO during the time period of the project, and a water meter to more accurately determining the pumping and flow through the rice fields at $5,000. And this is a total of $50,000. Note that although these costs are rounded, they either have already been expended, pumping and wetland rehabilitation costs, and payment will be based on existing invoices not to exceed the specified amount. And the cost of the equipment which would be purchased would not exceed the specified amount as well. Staff recommends that the State Water Board approve adding the $50,000 to the project for these increased costs, and also authorize the Deputy Director of the Division of Financial Assistance to execute the amendment and add these funds to the project. Also present for today's discussion and having submitted, I believe, blue cards is Harry McQuillan from the Bureau of Land Management, who is the project manager for the project, and Janice Cook of the Regional Water Board Central Valley, who's the TMDL in the TMDL program there. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Janine, I don't have cards from those folks. Do you have them?
Okay.
Fran?
So would it be more accurate to say that it's a $50,000 ceiling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the whole project is quite expensive.
Yes. The entire project
800,000.
is $750,000 from the 319 program and approximately $250,000 from the matching funds from BLM, from Fish and Game, and from U.S. Geological Survey.
So how will we be using the information that we're gaining from this? Is there a plan to apply this, the lessons learned into other areas at a much reduced cost rate?
Yes, I hope so. What they've been doing during the course of the project is they have been participating in having not necessarily classes, but participating and showing how this information can be used to stakeholders. They've made presentations and will make a presentation with the final report to the Delta Tributaries Monitoring Council, which is part of the Sacramento Watershed Program. And so the whole point of this project is to see if there are specific methodologies that you can use to reduce methylmercury production. And our goal is, at the end of the project, and as they have during the course of the project, provide that information to stakeholders so that they can make use of it.
So is there a plan to actually keep up with this? Because so many pilot projects, I mean, the government does lots and lots of pilot projects. And so far as I can tell, it's rare that they go beyond pilot, or at least it's, I don't hear about it. Maybe that's more accurate.
I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. I know that this is a long-term effort on the part of BLM and the other dischargers as part of the TMDL. I believe it was like an 8-year effort, and this would be like the first 3 years of it.
Okay.
So I suspect that they either will be seeking additional funding or already have funding in line to do to further the work on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve mentioned that there was someone here from BLM. We don't have a card. Would you like to come up, please? Would you like to come up to the podium, please? Yeah. If you would, please introduce yourself for the record.
My name's Harry McQuillan with the Bureau of Land Management.
Well, I thought you had.
Did you have a particular question, or?
Well,
I know that you had asked whether or not
what is your
intended to
plan
continue
for
this.
disseminating the information so that we can actually keep up with if we're amortizing the investment that we've made over time?
Yeah, you don't want to throw your money away.
Exactly.
So, as you may or may not know, the Casumnes River Preserve has been around for 27 years. It's a cooperative effort between 7 landowning partners, including the Bureau of Land Management, Cal Fish and Game, DWR, the Nature Conservancy, Ducks Unlimited, Sacramento County, and several non-landowning partners. We have 1,000 acres of organic rice operations, and we have 1,000 acres of managed wetland operations, and we use that 2,000 acres to support wintering migratory waterfowl and water birds, one of which is quite popular, the greater sandhill crane, which is also a state-listed threatened species. So when we first got involved with methylmercury issues, I have an avian toxicology background, and I decided that the last thing I wanted to do was poison state-threatened listed sandhill cranes. So we wanted to voluntarily get involved with this program in order to try to clean up our wetlands. And what I can tell you is that we have a final management plan that dictates how we would manage the preserve. And as part of that management plan, we have a entire chapter dedicated to research. And we only do applied research that benefits the management of the preserve. So in this case, methylmercury, cleaning up our wetlands and our rights operations, is applied research which we would then use to better our management. So there is a long-term commitment to improve the value of our wetlands for the sandhill cranes and for other waterfowl.
But will it, oh, I'm sorry, but will it be used in other wetlands? That's my...
Yes, my understanding is that we are in the development phase, and what our hope is through this project is to develop management practices which can then be applied to like the Sacramento Refuge, the San Luis Refuge, Kern, Pixley, Stone Lakes, which is our neighbors. So we are actively helping you all to develop management practices which would then be applied or could potentially be applied across the board.
Could you give us an idea what you've learned with the $750,000 we've spent on this so far?
Well, so far we're about 1.5 years into it, and we don't have all of the data back. We have just a little bit of preliminary data which shows that there is definitely a difference in the methylmercury concentrations from the inlets to the outlets based on the fish data and the water data. And we know that, like, for example, we had 3 different treatments of where we baled off the rice straw. And the idea was if we removed the rice straw, we would be removing some of that labile organic carbon. And then we also used disking to disk it under so that we could remove it from the area where it actually methylates. And then we had our typical practices in our rice, and then we also did water management in our wetlands. And so some of the things, while I don't have exact numbers as to what came back in the fish tissue yet, because we're still working on that, and we have one more fish deployment to do this summer. But what we do know is that when you hold water in a wetland longer, it produces a massive amount of vegetation, which was the one thing that we didn't want to do, because that obviously increased the amount of carbon that was out there. We also know that while in theory it sounds great to be able to bale off your rice straw or maybe disk it under, it doesn't always work that well, because when you put great big ruts into the rice, maybe when you harvested it when it was too wet, then it's very difficult to get a baler through there. There's also not a huge market for rice straw, so there are some things that we have had to figure out along the way in terms of feasibility. We also didn't realize how much it was going to cost to do increased pumping. And so these are the types of things that it's great to come up with a number in a document which says we'd like to get fish tissue to X, Y, or Z numbers, but in reality, when you try to implement that on the ground, there's a learning curve. And so I would say over this first year and a half, we've increased our knowledge exponentially regarding how you can implement management practices in the real world to help you achieve a number that is in a document.
If you would take back to your senior management the reason why I am not going to vote for this additional augmentation. When I received a budget, it was something that a 6-year-old could have done. I mean, it said you wanted $50,000, and we just backed into round numbers. I appreciate Steve's analysis that they're going to try and refine that, but you know, we aren't a piggy bank here, and when people need something to finish a project, it would be nice to know what things cost and exactly what they plan to do with the money. And I've gotten to the point, and I apologize to my staff for my outburst when they briefed me on it the other day. I was livid, and I'm not much calmer right now. If somebody has a project like this that's deemed to be worthwhile and they need something, they need to be able to show us what they're going to use the money for, instead of saying we need $50,000 and it's 10 here and 5 there and 20 something there, and oh, by the way, it all worked out to be exactly $50,000, because nothing in life is round numbers, and I think that's why government agencies are criticized for poor management of their dollars, and why I can't support this. But I realize that's not your responsibility, and if you would pass that on to someone, I'd appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you. Janice Cook.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Before the speaker leaves, actually, I have a question for Steve or for you. I have a copy of your full project proposal and have a question. There's, I don't know what page number it's on, but it says that the project will directly link with the Delta Tributaries Mercury Council, which is a component of the Sacramento River Watershed Program. What is that linkage exactly, and to what extent, if any, does the Sacramento River Watershed Program benefit from this?
Well, for example, at the preserve, we just hosted, I think it was last week, the Delta Tributary Mercury Council meeting, and where we gave a presentation. I gave a presentation about how the project fits in with our current management regime, and then our counterparts at USGS presented some of the preliminary data for the project. So we are actively involved with the DTMC as well as the non-point source work group, and we are volunteering our time, contributing in-kind contribution for that, to participate in these meetings as part of our project that you had previously funded. So that's how we fit in with the DTMC and with the non-point source work group. In terms of the Sacramento River watershed, it's no different whether you grow rice at the preserve on the Cosumnes River watershed or you grow it up in the Sac Valley. If we develop really good management practices that can be applied across the board, or maybe taken as a template and then modified for a particular geographic area, then it benefits the state as a whole in terms of water quality for the Delta, because, as you know, those San Joaquin and the Sacramento are coming to us, basically, at the head of the Delta, which is where
It doesn't sound, though, as if the Sacramento River Watershed Program as an entity derives direct benefit from this. I'm looking at Michael Alfer because, as he knows, I sit on the board of the Sacramento River Watershed Program. and I needed to know if there's a recusal in my immediate future.
You know, based on the description that we just heard from the Bureau of Land Management, it does not appear that the type of connection here, it's far too remote to trigger any kind of conflict requirements and recusal requirements.
Because from what I heard, it would be interesting if I were to recuse myself. Let me follow up to the chairman's concern. Is there a time-critical component to this request, or is there a possibility that some additional investigation and a more fleshed-out budget could be submitted that would address the chairman's concerns?
There is not a specific time frame for this. Basically, what the agenda item refers to, as Mr. Hoppen pointed out, as Chairman Hoppen pointed out, was that the numbers were rounded. But when those are, three of those things have already, the first three issues have already been completed by the Bureau on their own money. And so what we would be doing is paying.
And did they seek approval from the board staff before expending those expenditures?
No. Well, I don't know if they did or not.
No, as this gentleman indicated previously, we're contributing substantial in-kind contribution. I think it's $250,000. And so obviously we could have just shut our pumps off and said, well, we went over our budget and we're not going to finish this, but that's not what we did. I mean, we kept our pumps running. When USGS came and said, hey, we need flow-through water, I didn't just stop and say, well, I can't do that. I said, okay, we'll do what we need to do to make this a successful project. And in terms of, it seems like everybody is sort of interested in the rounded numbers. And I understand your concern, and I appreciate this gentleman's comment about that. We're not just throwing money away into a black hole. The board is going to receive, or, you know, my project manager is going to get the actual copies of the SMUD bills that were used for these pumping costs. She'll get the actual receipt for the price of the equipment. It's not like we're going to take $3,000. If it costs $2,000, that's all we're going to do. So you're going to get the receipts.
Thank you. Janice Cook?
I'm Janice Cook. I'm an environmental scientist with the Central Valley Water Board in the Mercury TMDL unit. And I just wanted to respond to Francis Bivy Weber's question about how will this information be used. This is one of those projects where we will be, there is a process for reviewing and using the information through the first phase of the Delta methylmercury TMDL. We set up a study process before people had to actually meet the methylmercury allocations. The board might recall that when we presented in 2010. So we have a review process. We have a technical advisory committee that's already met once with our stakeholders to talk about what do we know now, what are remaining questions, including things like Harry talked about, feasibility, what would be adverse environmental impacts of some of these proposed management measures. So this is one case where we do have a process and a stakeholder group that is going to be really going to be able to benefit from information from this study. So,
I would just request that as you, I mean, this study is a year and a half into it, and it has more to go, and there's certainly a lot of dissemination. But if someone could put into a tickler file in a year or two to report back, and maybe just report back to staff, and it could go into a you know, some written report that gets disseminated. But you know, hearing back that actually either it didn't work, and that's, you know, that's an outcome that can, you know, we won't like, but it certainly is an outcome. But we need to hear how it's not only the completion of the project itself, but how it's getting disseminated, because there's just too much expenditure in government on experiments and on pilots that just benefit the person who did it or the area that did it, but really don't get picked up by others. And so while I may not be here, I do think it would be useful to report back.
Certainly. Staff will be making annual reports to our Central Valley Water Board members, so we could share that information.
Perfect.
with this
Actually,
board as
I'll
well.
go you one step further, Fran. And this is something that actually I've discussed with Karen. Part of the R in ORP is research, the Office of Research, Planning, and Performance. It was always my hope that with ORP, somehow we create the clearinghouse to maintain information on all the research and all the the projects and pilots that we support, and have one place where the public, not just staff, but the public can go and see what are the current research and pilots that the board is funding, what are the results, and how are we sharing that results. And I've been picking on poor Karen for a while now to try to get that together. I understand it's not among the highest priority, given everything else that's on ORP's plate, but it is something that I'm starting to hear, both now as well as at the Water Policy Conference recently, where there's a great deal of, I think, of need from a transparency purpose on our part, definitely, but also just to share with others what we're doing and to make sure that things aren't being replicated unnecessarily.
So the project that you're referring to, Member Dodek, is actually tied in with our paperless office rollout that we are undertaking here at the State Water Board now. So we're moving as much of our information online and making it available to the public as well. So we have actually a listing of research projects that were funded by the State Water Board. It goes back a number of years. There's over 100 projects on it right now. We have a template for how that will look in our new ECM system, Electronic Content Management. And as soon as we get the state board organization onto the ECM system itself, we will be able to roll out that research library, and that will also be available to the public through an internet portal.
Karen, something that Fran touched on is very important to me. My displeasure with this project has nothing to do with the idea of the project. It has just to do with what I think is sloppy business practices. But when there is a report, it doesn't necessarily need to show that this worked. I mean, we're going to have a lot of these, there might be more value in what was done if it didn't work than to kind of twist it around and say, well, we think we learned this positive and this positive. I mean, if all the things in front of us, the methylization of mercury is certainly one of the most elusive challenges that anybody has before them. So please don't get this idea that because we've spent money on something that we have to have positive results. I certainly see a value in the negative in this, if you will. So don't think I'm being a complete jerk on every part of this.
The template that we developed was actually developed, if you'll remember him, by Bob Linguel, who's now working at the Air Resources Board. And one of the features that he wanted to roll into this template was a very quick and easy way to look at what were the results. And I'm sure it would be easy to further develop that to show, the positive and the negative, but a quick view instead of having to open up the entire report.
Okay. And this template will be shared then with all the regional boards who are engaged in this research?
And they will be encouraged to add to it, add to the library.
So take that back to Pamela, and we will make sure that we talk to the other EOs. They shouldn't just, it should be a high priority.
Yeah. I'd like to make a comment with respect to this as well, that every 319 project is required to have a final report, and we summarize that final report and attach it into the federal grants reporting and tracking system, so it's not only dispersed statewide but nationwide as well. And then we have a specific section in our non-point source website where we refer to opportunities and research that we necessarily have funded or others have funded that can be used to choose management practices that are the most effective. So it will be on our website as well.
Well, and just this is an aside, but I heard from Lisa Babcock, who was up just before you, that a lot of the DFA, when they're looking at at underground storage tank projects, they're spending a lot of time looking at the databases that we have to make sure that things are, that they're getting all the good information that's there. And I would say when this does get up, not only DFA, but any water quality project that is being proposed really should comb through the research that's been done and take advantage of it rather than duplicating.
Thank you. Thank you, Janice. Marty Scholl.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. On behalf of the Sacramento Yolo Mosquito and Vector Control District, thank you for the opportunity to comment on agenda item number 4 here. The district recognizes the issues surrounding the methylization of mercury within the California Delta. However, the district wants to bring to the board's attention the possible implications of providing state monies to flood local properties within the district that will need to be treated for mosquitoes as a result of this project and the flooding. This grant-funded program seems to be in conflict with other water board-directed programs that limit or complicate the district's abilities to treat mosquitoes, such as the Vector Control NPDES permit. These rice fields and wetlands, while previously flooded, will continue to require mosquito control treatments as a direct result of this flooding, or the flooding regimes and management schedules associated with this study.
Thank you, Marty. Richard Shanahan.
Thank you, members of the board. My name's Dick Shanahan with Barkowitz Cronich Shanahan, General Counsel for Mosquito and Vector Control Association of California. I'm actually here to talk about your next agenda item, but when I looked at the agenda this morning, I found the juxtaposition between your 2 agenda items very, very interesting, and would just like to comment on it. There's high interest among the state board right now and other state and federal agencies on wetlands restoration. Wetlands restoration generally is a good thing. Our members generally work very closely with refuge managers. Most refuge managers, wetlands managers, are happy to have the assistance of the local mosquito and vector control district. And as we move forward with this new regime of NPDES permit regulation and increased regulation of mosquito control districts, I just urge the board to forever be sensitive to that balance. If you create and restore new wetlands, you are creating new wetlands, new mosquito sources. And our clients, our members, are going to do the best they can to manage those sources, but the more constraints that are put on them regulatory-wise, there's going to be a reduced level of service, and it's going to be harder for that collaboration between wetland managers and mosquito control agencies to continue as it has been. So I really just wanted to comment, an interesting irony between the 2 agenda items, but urge the board to be sensitive as you move forward, to never lose sight to the fact that wetlands do create mosquitoes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shanahan. Ladies, I haven't been very coy about my opinion on this.
I move that we approve the staff recommendation.
I will second the motion.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
No for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Once again, I apologize about my outburst to you and council in our briefing the other day. It wasn't a reflection on you.
That's quite all right, and I have a present for your grandmother, too.
Yeah, I bet. It's not my grandmother, actually. I'm old enough as my mother. And she wasn't that old when she had me, unfortunately.
But that's a compliment.
Mr. Howard, can we move on to our next item, please?
Yes, this is our next and last item. It's to consider adoption of amendments to the vector control permit. The major amendment pertains to the removal of restrictive language in the discharge provision that will allow vector control districts to effectively maintain their mosquito and vector control programs for public health concerns, even in impaired water bodies. Presenting is Phil Iserina, who will introduce the other staff.
Good morning, Chair Hoppin, members of the board. My name is Phil Iserina. I'm the chief of the NPDES wastewater program in the Division of Water Quality in the surface water branch of the State Water Board. before I get to, let me back up. Here with me today are Renan Jauregui, also of the NPDES Wastewater Unit, and Marley Wood from the Office of Chief Counsel. Before I get started, or before staff gets started on the presentation, I would like to inform the audience that the response to comments, or copies of the response to comments, change sheet number 1 and change sheet number 2 are on the table in the back room, in the back of the room. And now I'd like to ask the board if they prefer that we skip the presentation and go to the cards directly, if the board desires to do that.
Phil, there seems to be some confusion on the part of some people as to what we're doing here. So I think there would be a value in that, and I think there would be a value either from you or Marley to give us a little historical perspective of why we are dealing with this issue today and what brought us to all of this. So unless my colleagues object, I think it's better to hear this again, because clearly there is a variance of opinion, I guess, amongst some of the stakeholders.
In that case,
I agree, but before you begin, Phil, could I request a copy of change sheet number 2? Thank you. I don't have that.
in that case, I'd like to turn over the table to Renan, who'll be giving the presentation today.
Thank you, Janine.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. My name is Renan Jauregui. I'm in the NPDES unit, and I'll here to present to you our proposed permit amendment. As you requested, we'll go ahead and give you a background. And as we all know, in 2009, the Sixth Circuit rule in National Cotton Council versus EPA that pesticide applications at or near surface waters are required to have an NPDES permit. The following months, staff met with representatives from Mosquito Vector Control Association of California and the California Department of Public Health, who requested staff to draft an adulticide permit for your consideration to cover their adult mosquito control program applications. Although there was an existing vector control permit at the time, the permit covered only larviciding applications. The association was concerned because its members had received notices of intent to sue. In response to the association's and the Department of Public Health's concerns and requests, we formed a working group to draft the adulticide permit. That working group consisted of representatives from the association, Department of Public Health, Department of Pesticide Regulation, US EPA Region 9, and headquarters and state board staff. A permit was drafted and subsequently adopted in March 2011. Following adoption of the vector control permit in 2011, the association had concerns with the last-minute change to language in provision A2, which basically the language prohibited discharges to water bodies impaired by pesticide active ingredients or any pesticide in the same chemical family. The association's concerns were mainly dealing with the language itself. The current permit language potentially precludes the application of any registered pesticide for adult mosquito control in some areas where the waterways are impaired by chlorpyrifos, diazinon, 2 organophosphates pesticides, and pyrethroids. Most of the impairment caused by the OPs and the pyrethroids are from OPs and pyrethroids that are not used in adult mosquito control. As shown on the slide, malathion and permethrin, a pyrethroid, are the only 2 among the active ingredients listed in the permit that have caused impairment to our surface waters. The 303D list shows the potential sources of impairment by malathion as agriculture or urban runoff, and for permethrin as well agriculture. Vector control districts also apply in these areas. However, staff could not tell from the listing whether vector control applications contribute to the impairment. Here's a list of current adulticide active ingredients available to use. Provision A2 language prevents the use of organophosphates, pyrethrins, and pyrethroids. In summary, the restriction has the effect of entirely prohibiting mosquito control in areas with water bodies impaired by chloropyrifos, diazinon, and pyrethroids, and thus resulting in a much greater mosquito exposure and public health concern. By precluding the adult mosquito control in areas impaired by the same chemical family, such restrictions may lead to unwarranted and unacceptable risks to public health in these areas without significant benefit to water quality. In response to the association's concern, staff from the Water Board, taking into consideration the public health concerns and after reevaluating the water quality impacts, proposes amending the general permit. The amendment before you proposes to do the following. Remove the phrase "or any pesticide in the same chemical family" in provision A2 and elsewhere in the permit. Add to the permit 5 adulticides, and that should be 10 larvicides instead of 9, and add some clarifying language. Comments on the draft amended permit were due by noon on March 12, 2012. By this deadline, we received a comment letter each from the association and San Francisco Bay Keeper, as the slide shows. However, on March 27th, a representative from the California Stormwater Quality Association informed staff that he will give a presentation at the meeting with 3 or 5 slides. Also, on April 2, San Francisco Regional Board staff expressed concerns regarding a statement in change sheet number 1 that could be misinterpreted and requested the statement to be deleted. The statement reads, "This indicates that they are not likely a water quality concern." The statement is contained in the second paragraph on item 2 in change sheet 1. The paragraph describes the steps that the State Water Board staff goes through in reviewing pesticide products before they're added to the permit. Due to the potential for misinterpretation of the statement, the staff recommends deleting the sentence. Now, with regards to the comments submitted by the association, they were mainly related to other issues in the permit. They request removal of certain larvicide monitoring requirements. They ask that the staff document the process for adding new products into the permit. And they support the proposed amendment despite remaining concerns with the NPDES permitting requirements, which the association asserts hampers effective mosquito control and exposes permittees to fines and lawsuits for alleged noncompliance. Staff's response to the comments are: the larvicide monitoring is needed to adequately assess the water quality impacts to the receiving water. The process for adding new products has been outlined in the response to comments. And under current law, a permit is required to ensure compliance with the Clean Water Act requirements, and it provides protection from third-party lawsuits.